Mind you, the mantle of Lord interests me none. The fire-linking curse, the legacy of lords, let it all fade into nothing, for that is our curse.
We all know that the path to linking the fire is a cursed one, and that the Lothric family will produce a worthy heir to this flame even if through unspeakable means. But what is Prince Lothric's curse, and how did it come to be? While we exclusively find the pus of man within the kingdom of Lothric, it's unclear exactly what they are. Though I'd say it's safe to assume it's some form of chaotic humanity, given the hollows it sprouts from and that they drop dark gems, which are said to be born of disembodied humanity. The gods and their associates are certainly no stranger to experimentation, whether to extend their life, legacy, or kingdom. And I believe the pus of man was one such experiment. Since Dark Souls 1, we have been burning humanity to embolden the fire and preserve ourselves. So why not apply that on a grander scale? Why not stuff the air of fire close to brimming with humanity in hopes of extending the fire for even longer? Not a terrible experiment in retrospect, and surely not coincidental that we find the pieces of the disembodied humanity from the pus of man and right outside where we would find Lothric's king Osiris, who has also been known to experiment. It would also explain why the pus of man appears from Udix Gundr, considering he was supposed to link the flame but failed to do so for one reason or another, and was very likely a part of the royal Lothric family. And a Lothric royal family tree would certainly be something interesting to see. We know Osiris was king, and at least had some children with Guinevere, the queen of Lothric, but the only one of his children that we can confirm is Ocelot, as even Osiris says,
"Well, I will not give him up, for he is all that I have."
Which could be indicative of him only having the one child, or the last one left alive. My point basically being that the heirs the Lothric family were producing just weren't living up to the mantle of Lord, until Prince Lothric. But what made him special? The short answer, I believe, is incest. All throughout fiction and non-fiction alike, royal families have practiced incest as a means of keeping their bloodline pure. Prince Lothric is a result of this same principle. The world was running out of options, as Lothric heirs just weren't worthy enough to the flame. But what if they produced an heir of the original royal family's bloodline? So, Guinevere and Gwyndolin came together to produce an heir specifically designed to link the flame. Think about it. Lothric was born a frail and shriveled child, which is an indicator of being born from incest, but I'm not going to go into the science of the whole thing. But maybe this frailty also came from Gwyndolin, who was skinny and frail himself. They also share the same light blonde hair color, and give that some credit because if you read Game of Thrones, that was a whole thing. And finally, they also share the same voice actor, but you can take that as you will. Heck, maybe even Lorien was born of Guinevere and Gwyndolin as well. He shares the same light hair color and likes to wear helmets similar in design to Gwendolin's, but I guess that idea isn't super important right now. The point being that Prince Lothric was the culmination of ideas meant to be the perfect heir. So, he was procreated through the original royal bloodline and stuffed full of humanity, a true testament to the fire-linking legacy. And some would say, unspeakable means. Of course, we never see the pus of man revealed from Lothric, and maybe that's because he accepted his curse, but not for the reasons he was created. As we know, he turned away from his duties after a certain scholar bent his ear, and he was content to abandon his role and watch it all fade to nothing. And was likewise joined by his brother Lorien, who embraced Lothric's curse. But what exactly is that curse? Well, we all know that humanity is cursed with undeath, so if a godlike being was stuffed full of humanity, he'd probably acquire a somewhat similar curse. And historically, the undead did do a great job at being fodder for the flame, so this wasn't necessarily the worst plan they could have thought of. We even see this curse take effect when fighting the twin princes. When Lorien falls, Lothric goes to his brother's side and tells him to rise, as that is their curse. And Lorien does indeed rise and continues the fight, albeit weaker and weaker each time, or until Lothric himself is killed. And that is quite similar to the Curse of Undeath, continuing to rise after death, losing a bit of yourself each time. But perhaps since the curse is shared between the brothers, Undeath doesn't apply to both. And that idea might be seen between the two wyverns perched on either side of Lothric's castle, both inflicted by the pus of man, but when one dies, so too does the other. This idea is supplemented with the fact that the twin princes are resistant to dark damage, whereas all the other gods or those related to them in the Dark Souls games were notoriously susceptible to it. Prince Lothric is even sympathetic of the Unkindled's mission or expectations, since they really do have a lot in common. Meant to save the world by doing the bidding of others, ultimately to your own sacrifice. And when the Unkindled is defeated, Lothric offers what I believe is genuine respite.
This spot marks our grave, but you may rest here too, if you like.
I'm unsure exactly how the bond between Lorien and Lothric became so strengthened that they cared only for one another. But it always seemed Lorien was poised, at least by others, to be the king of Lothric, and with his little brother to reignite the Age of Fire, Lothric would need a strong king with a strong claim. But just as Prince Lothric refused to be a cog in the Age of Fire's wheel, so too does Lorien, and they embraced each other and shared in their curse. And maybe that was the final middle finger to those who thought to control them. For if Prince Lothric dies linking the fire, Lorien dies as well, and Lothric would be left without a bloodline and without a king.